A very good morning to you guys. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Brighton. This is the CIVIC Forum, a show that seeks to look at different people doing amazing work in Bulawayo and beyond. Today on the show, we're going to look at the visual artists in Bulawayo, the issue of visual arts, how they are facing many challenges, facing the issue of funding, the issue of spaces and so on. And joining me on the show this morning is Cliford Zulu, the founder of Center for Contemporary Art in Bulawayo, to help understand more about his journey in visual arts and also the journeys of different artist that is managed before. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Let's speak to us about the Center for Contemporary Art in Bulawayo. What does it do?
So, Center for Contemporary Art in Bulawayo is a curatorial project. It's not an organization. It's a curatorial project that I am doing in order to champion the development of contemporary arts in Bulawayo. It's a project that is aiming to highlight the other element of visual arts, which is contemporary art, because I felt that there was a lack in Bulawayo in that aspect. So CCA then comes in to try and elevate our visual artists to at least squarely fit into what contemporary art in the region and internationally is all about.
You've been the curator for the Bulawayo Art Gallery for many years now. Let's reflect on your journey as the curator. What was your role there? What are you doing as the curator of the gallery?
So I started off as an artist, as I'm a sculptor. That's my profession. But obviously concerned about the way the administration was going on, I then joined the Visual Arts Association, where I was a chairperson for quite some time, since 2001. And then in 2006, I then joined the National Gallery of Zimbabwe in Bulawayo as a visual arts outreach officer, specifically targeting to identify artists, promote them, and nurture them. And then later in 2011, then I was appointed curator for the National Gallery in Bulawayo. So the role was basically to promote visual arts development in the city, identifying artists, putting up exhibitions, promoting their works locally, and also going around the region, CIVIC, and obviously beyond the continent of Africa.
With the background of being an artist, right? I know most of the time people from Bulawayo complain about the issue of support, issue of funding, and so on. Speak to us maybe on your journey as an artist before as an admin part. How was your journey as an artist? Issues of funding and issues of support from the local community?
When we were doing art in the early 90s, so art was easy. Most of the artists in Zimbabwe, rather in Bulawayo, were educated and designed to meet a tourist market. Right, when that was happening during our time, so funding was not a problem because we would sell and then buy our own equipment, and life was good. But then things turned out to change somewhere in the 1999, 2001, when the economic challenges came into the country, and obviously that affected tourism coming into the country, thereby affecting finances for the artists. So a lot of artists left the country. Some opted to go into formal employment. But some of us that remained, we then pushed the agenda of changing our narrative so that we could be relevant to the new dispensation, as you would like. So the issues of financing then was not a challenge. Moving on to the current crop of artists, you would realize that in order for them to prosper, they would require a flourishing market. And changing that scenario affected a lot of visual artists. Now artists had to rely on cross-border trading to go to South Africa, Botswana to sell their wares because it was difficult. And also the lack of appreciation on our part from our people actually caused the problem of consuming the arts. And as a result, we saw a lot of artists now coming back and crying foul to say, lack of funding, our art is not being pushed enough. But it's all about your artwork. If you create good works of art, you get the money.
But also when you speak of arts, right, people think of going to the concert, guitars and so on, music and dancing and so on. People forget about visual art, the issue of paintings and so on, and drawing and sculpture and so on. What makes us focus more on guitar, entertainment and so on, and forget and also appreciate that visual art?
So art is a way of life, and visual arts is attached to the way we live. You know, our dressing, our cars, our designs, our house, everything. So it has always been seen as it's part of our life. Whereas music is kind of like an extraordinary talent where people are seen to be putting people together and performing. But then the thought process is the same for the person to write music, to write music, and the person to script a sculpture is the same. It then depends on where do you then place your artwork. So visual artists is more individual. It's my art, my sculpture in my studio, Nyapenda and everything like that. So it's me and my artwork. And then it takes someone else to come to my studio or to an exhibition space and say, oh, wow, I love your work because it resonates with the time, with the space that I've been, or it speaks to my past or my future, and then they consume that artwork. So now we are moving into stories. Both of these musicians and visual artists are telling stories. Of late, visual artists are beginning to see the importance of telling a story, research, because gone are the days where one will say, Mpupile, you know, I dreamt about this and I woke up and I started to draw. No, now there's a process. There's a reason why one would wake up in the morning and dress like that. You go through your wardrobe and you check. The reason why today I want to dress as a checkered shirt is because I'm going to do this. It speaks to what I'm going to do for the day. So we are changing that as CCA to try and then introduce an aspect of research and storytelling using the visual arts.
Yeah. Now let's focus more on the visual arts in that was held in Bulawayo over the past weeks. I was focusing on that, and the issue. The main speaker spoke about issue of funding, issue of support. Speak to us more about that in terms of what are the challenges faced by visual artists in Bulawayo in particular.
All right. So as a concern, because we've been doing art for a long time, which is the main traditional art of doing paintings, lions, and drawing African scenes and putting them in the gallery and selling. We then felt that our artists in Bulawayo are facing a challenge of penetrating into an international market. I mean, this is a new trend now. Artists are exhibiting internationally and making a good living out of it. But coming back to our artists, you realize in Bulawayo there is a challenge understanding contemporary art. So contemporary art means, generally, it just means adding a certain value to the current work that you're doing, which is what I spoke about in research, to say what are the stories that I'm putting out there. Remember, art is a tool, and art should always reflect the current. If art is not telling the stories, then art is dead, because for us to understand what happened long back ago, abantu are referring to Bushman scenes, abantu are referring to different archives, and then out of that they are generating stories and they're understanding the past. So this is what CCA is all about. And then coming to the visual arts Indaba that we just held. So it's a project that was sponsored by the Culture Fund of Zimbabwe Trust, obviously supported by the EU. We got support to go around the country and do some outreach programs, which took us to Mutare, which took us to Harare, Gweru, and Victoria Falls, and other smaller cities. The whole idea was to try and see what is the current status of contemporary art in Zimbabwe in general, and then zeroing it down to Bulawayo. And then the Indaba was the culmination of the outcome of these workshops, where we wanted then to share with our artists on what our findings were and how best can we package this so that we can go back to our sponsors, we can go back to our consumers, we can go back to our partners and share the story of contemporary art. Now, a lot of issues were raised at Indaba, as you're mentioning. The major issue, obviously, in all aspects of the creative sector is funding. And we spoke about funding as a challenge in order for artists to begin to create their artworks, not necessarily because they are not talented. So there is talent acquired, there is talent that is natural. So for those that are naturally talented, they keep on working and producing beautiful works of art. We still have a bit of a challenge for those who need to go and acquire the skill somewhere else, and they struggle with the aspect of funding. So CCA and Indaba are then bringing out the resolutions. This weekend we are meeting at the Bulawayo Polytech to then put the resolutions out and then go back to our partners and say, this is how the visual artists in Bulawayo feel when it comes to issues of funding, spaces, and appreciation.
Yeah. You speak about this workshop that we're doing across the country, Mutare, Harare, and so on, and trying to find a state of contemporary arts in Zimbabwe. Maybe give us a brief in terms of findings. What did you guys find? Where is our contemporary art in Zimbabwe at now?
So we've got one gallery, one gallery. It's a national gallery, which is split into branches in Mutare and Bulawayo. We've got one major independent gallery in Zimbabwe, which is First Floor Gallery. And then we've got other spaces in Harare. In Bulawayo, there's only one national gallery. So when it comes to these issues, the understanding, until art evolves, it changes from time to time. So going around the country and meeting Ama visual artists, you realize that they are still stuck in the old traditional way of doing art. Fortunate for those that have been working with different spaces are now exposed to new forms of art. The National Gallery then set up a pavilion in the International Venice Biennale, which was a flagship to bring contemporary art in Zimbabwe. I remember when we took the first bunch of artists there, when we came back into the country, then you realize there was a boom in contemporary art practice. Different spaces were now coming up in order to also want to be part of this international exhibition. So the findings were quite scary, that most of the artists nationally still don't understand the concept of contemporary art. It's okay to do your lions this one, but then if you take them to an art fair international or an art symposium, our artists struggle when to get, first of all, to express themselves, to narrate the stories relating to their artwork, and also to speak about the issue of art in their own background, because remember, art is attached to who you are and your histories. So if you go to West Africa, for example, artists, they are very fluent when it comes to their art and their background and their histories, because it's one thing. So we need to then constantly go back to our artists and say to them, no, you need to sometimes to stop. And the same way artisans and my art for years, because we were targeting a tourist market that has disappeared. Now, how about we start and research and begin to research and tell our own stories in our own artworks, and then let's see what happens.
So do you think that's the reason why maybe you have maybe fewer consumers of art, contemporary art, because they don't understand also? I can go to the gallery and I can see just a painting. I remember I was talking to George Masera last time. What they just pick colors and so on. What does it mean for me if I'm buying these colors? Mm-hmm. So do you think that's a cause of what people are not consuming enough of that art because they don't understand that?
Our people don't understand. They do understand art, because if you go to you realize what they put on their walls. But then there are people who have left the country and come back, and they've seen what art is all about in Europe. And they are the ones who are coming back and walking to spaces like a gallery and say, I want to buy that artwork. Because we need to understand the commercial element of art, which is investing in art. So when you buy an artwork from an artist, you are one, supporting the person, and at the same time you are investing in your own as like a small asset. Because we always joke and say, when a house is burning, for these rich people, the big houses, what's the first thing that they collect? It's the artwork. They would leave on televisions and all these things because of the value of the artworks that they have. So we, as CCA, need to constantly teach, or not teach, but we need to share this information with our own people as well. Once you buy artwork, you're actually putting an investment that you can have in your house. It's like you have planted some imali that is going to grow over the years, because an artwork that you buy for $10 today, in the next 10 years, it will be $100. So it's an investment in a way. So we need to constantly develop programs that will then reach to our people and talk to them about the importance of art, which starts from education in our schools. Our parents need to allow our children to study art, and then so that they can become professional artists and get some degrees, some MAs, just like anyone else in the employment sector.
How important are these cultural exchanges? I know many times there's what you call in-house, something around in-house exchange programs for artists, right? How important are these? I'm sure you've benefited from those before. We go to South Africa, go to different countries to benefit and see what other people are doing. How important are those in the life of an artist?
I think constantly working by yourself in the studio does not help you to grow. But visiting other studios, visiting other countries, then teaches you, because inspiration from artists comes from going out and talking to different people and telling their stories through your artwork. So the residencies are very important to artists because they expose them to new thought processes. They expose them to new materials, they expose them to new audiences. And when they come back home, they then share that information with other, fellow artists and peers. And as a result, the creative sector grows in that aspect of contemporary art. So unfortunately, some of the artists are not keen to invest in traveling, because art is all about traveling, the excitement and meeting different people and creating artworks out of that. So it's a very key component of contemporary art, these residencies.
I've been following this one artwork by the Tower Block, a man sitting there holding his head, right? I've been seeing this artwork in the what TikTok, people are using that what TikTok nowadays. I'm saying, but this thing is an old artwork that's been there for many years in Bulawayo, but now it's part of TikTok videos and so on. What do you think of that artwork now being translated into the modern day social media platforms? But we want a corner, like a Tower Block, but now it's there on TikTok platforms.
It's another element of art appreciation. It's a very good thing that people are realizing that, although even the context is different, but the whole idea is that there is art in the public spaces. So our public art has kind of like stopped. There hasn't been any new public art in Bulawayo. So if you go to the former Woolworth, for example, you see there's an artwork of a mother and child there. If you go to Pioneer House, there is an artwork by the miners. I did a research on that, and I can share with some of viewers on that. So public art is an important component of visual arts practice because it shares stories about the important times and people that were there in the place. So that thinking meant by, I think it's David Ndlovu, a sculptor, it's currently reflecting the sadness and the dull moments that people are currently facing, and they associate and resonate better with that artwork because it kind of like resembles the way we feel at the moment. But in a jovial mood, in a country where everything, people will be associating themselves with dancers and sculptures that are kind of like jovial and happy. So that's the purpose of art. It then speaks to the people. As it goes viral on TikTok, people are beginning to see the role that these artworks are playing in our society.
But speaking of the issue of public monuments like that, public issues of public arts and so on, artifacts and so on, but why was Bulawayo stopped having more of those? I'm sure it's been long since we had many things. Why is Bulawayo stopped having those?
So it's commissioning. Most of the public art is commissioned art. So I'm aware that the government, I'm not so sure if it's policy yet, but they did say that all government departments need to be endowed with Zimbabwean art. So, for example, if you go to a passport office, you should see Zimbabwean art in their offices, in their public spaces. Once that culture picks up, then our artists will be commissioned to continuously do artworks. I remember at some point, the airport in Bulawayo, when it was renovated, there was a need for a huge Joshua Nkomo sculpture, just like you see when you arrive at King Shaka in Durban. You'll see a big sculpture of Shaka there. But there is no funding. Someone needs to fund that project to pay the artist to buy art materials and stuff like that. If you look at the Joshua Nkomo statue that is in the city center, people identify that it's now a rendezvous for many people. So it's a very, very important monument for Zimbabwean people. But what we need to understand that it costs a lot of money for artists to be commissioned to do that. But at some point, we should be able to convince our government, first of all, because they are mandated through the Ministry of Arts to support such public art processes. And private companies can come in and support the development and erection of such public art in our spaces.
Guys, if you're just joining us, this is Civic Forum. I'm talking to Cliford Zulu, the founder of Center for Contemporary Art in Bulawayo, speaking about different issues, visual arts, and also the artists in general in Bulawayo. But now let's move on to the issue of artistic expression. You know, at times I've seen songs being banned, I've seen sculptures in Bulawayo being banned and removed. Speak to us more about that part, to say, but we have a right to express ourselves constitutionally in the constitutional. But however, artists cannot express themselves through sculpture, through songs, and so on. Why is the issue of banning and censorship is being part of art?
Art disturbs the comfort, isn't it? Art reflects the current, the now, in whatever format. So I think I'm reminded by the case, because I was involved at the gallery then, Owen Masego. I think in visual arts, it's one of the cases that then we learned from. So artists will create artwork and reflect a particular time and a particular incident as they go. So be it controversial or not, then it becomes controversial in the sense that the state or the police or any other person, when they feel that it's no longer safe for them, then they can speak out. There is another artwork by Adam Adebe called Looking into the Future, which was controversial at the Tower Block there. And it had to be removed, and it was now placed at the National Gallery because of the so-called nudity. And there are different societies where we live. Some Christians, some art enthusiasts, they love such artworks. The confusing part with our policymakers is that when they do travel internationally in Europe, they take photos behind with these backgrounds of statues as nude as they are. But when they come back home, they do support these bannings, as you would say. So censorship is fine, freedom of expression is fine, and obviously it's got a limit on how far can you go expressing yourself. But CCA is creating a platform for artists who otherwise would not fit into a national gallery, which is part of the government, to then openly express themselves in a different space that is outside the gallery. Whether or not it will be banned, but we need to say it as it is, and through the arts we should be able to do that. But obviously we are cognizant of the fact that policies do exist. But obviously we should be able to influence policy change as well if we do feel that it's not working well with us or it's infringing on our rights as artists.
Now let's focus more on different institutions that are there in Bulawayo. There's the Bulawayo Theatre, there's Amakos, spoke about Amakos Arts Theatre, the earlier on before Saturday show, and also the gallery there in Bulawayo. How are these institutions shaping the art that is there in Bulawayo, and also how are they contributing to the development of economy in Bulawayo, local economy in particular?
So currently, most of these institutions, I would say they are on pause from where I come from, because we are not seeing new things coming out of these institutions. So Indaba had that particular agenda to bring these institutions on one round table and begin to interrogate them and say, guys, what exactly are you doing for the development of the arts in the sector? So a lot of issues were raised targeting institutions like the National Arts Council, which is a regulating authority. There are some issues there when it comes to the registration of visual arts, because the National Gallery and the National Arts Council have got established by an Act of Parliament. And then in order for me as a visual artist to register, I need to go to the National Arts Council. Yet I don't understand what then is the role of the National Gallery when it comes to the development of my artwork as a visual artist. And then obviously the city of Bulawayo has a major role in setting up institutions in Bulawayo. We are speaking about amphitheater, we are speaking about Amakosi Theatre, private and local government owned. Their role is to champion the development of arts and promote artists as they grow, as they live, as they practice their work, as the work is being consumed. That is their major role. And if they are not performing that duty, then it's a challenge to us, the practitioners, because you need to go back to them and say, how come you're not doing this? And why are you not doing this? That should raise discussions moving forward.
Yeah, I always see visual artists, the way they are dressing, the way they are here. Is look at Owen Masego's here, look at George Masara's here. I'm looking at your parade. I'm always seeing you wearing this. Is it a statement or saying something about your artistic expression as well?
Every artist has an element of identity. If you look at Michael Jackson, for example, he went to extremes to try and project himself as a superstar, and identify himself as Michael Jackson. So when it comes to artists, we are not understood. Even at home, Kaya doing art, the first thing they'll scribble around the walls and the kitchen, and then as a parent you need to understand that they are not making the walls dirty, but this is a talented child, and take steps to promote their development as artists instead of pushing the children towards academics. So identity is very important because it helps you to put your message out clearly to the people. So the beret has become like a symbol for CCA. So you probably realize Fisani and I and myself, whenever we're doing CCA activities, we put on these berets because we have a mission that we need to champion and question issues around visual arts practice in Bulawayo. And then moving forward, I think the history of the beret, you will see it in the army, it's got discipline. It's an element but if you see it in other, it's a revolution as well. So not to put it in that way, but yes, we have a mission, and we do feel that a black beret at the moment should take us to our vision.
So lastly, what can you say to Mzali out there who's focusing? I know STEM subjects are always the talk of the town, focus on science, focus on this, focus on technology and so on. But art is neglected. I was speaking to Tabani Moyo the other day, he was saying to me, even artists are ashamed of saying I'm an artist. Students are ashamed to say I'm doing drama and so on. What can you say to Mzali who's watching the show this morning, saying, encourage your child to do art? You're speaking about script and so on. What can you say to Mzali who's a child who's passionate about art, but however, but see, artist doesn't make money at all? What can you say to Mzali?
I think it's our education, and we grow up every time when you're in school, what you want to be when you grow up. I want to be a doctor, a pilot, I want to be a nurse. And if a child say I want to be an artist, it's like, it's like, why? That's not a profession, but later, part of CCA India was to bring the academic side of it. We brought in Chino University to try and the Bulawayo Polytechnic Art School to try and say there is an element of the profession, the sector, the arts being a profession, right up to a doctorate level, and the one they can then get employment. So to parents out there, I think once you realize that your child is talented when it comes to the arts, support that. Don't push the children towards academic side, because obviously they will not do very well because they are inclined towards being creative, without needing the education. Our education system as well, you realize that even the teachers that are there in schools don't understand the art education part. They might be qualified as an art teacher, but they don't have art education, which also translates to other heads of institutions. They are good people that are well qualified for that job, but then they don't have the art education part of it. And some of these institutions are struggling because of that element. Like I mentioned, art is a talent. It's inborn. Some do acquire the skill and they struggle later, but some do very well. Parents should allow children to just do art.
Yeah. I've seen many artists coming from your hands. You have groomed many artists. I've seen you shaping many artists' careers and so on. Now, as CCA, you're continuing doing that. When it's all been said and done, Mr. Zulu, how should we remember you?
I think we want to leave a legacy where we did not sit down and watch things die. I think one of the reasons why CCA, the project, has been created is because we found a lack, because we've been exposed internationally and we've seen what artists are doing internationally, but we are not seeing our artists in those places, in those spaces, in those platforms. So we're coming back to the country to say, how about we help you to prepare yourself mentally and physically in order for you to fit into those international spaces. Not that they're important, but there are other platforms where artists can then express themselves in such a space. Obviously, the CCA is a curatorial project right now, but after the Indaba and after the outreach, I think we are deciding now to formalize it as an institution because I think there was a huge misunderstanding when it comes to that project. And now that we are independent, we are now pushing it to be as a registered entity, and we can start operating formally as an institution in Bulawayo. So that's the plan.
Yeah, so thanks so much for your time for joining us this morning on site. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you've been watching the Civic Forum. My name is Brighton. My guest for this morning is Cliford Zulu, the director and founder of Center for Contemporary Art in Bulawayo, speaking to us about different challenges faced by artists in Bulawayo, in particular the visual artists. Hope you guys enjoy the show, and please do like all our platforms from YouTube, Facebook, to TikTok, to Twitter. We are there to give all the breaking stories. For myself, as I said, it's bye for now.